everyone, welcome back to the channel. Sorry it's been so long since I did a video. We did a ton of canning last summer. I put up about 700 jars last season, which probably doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's a ton of jars. So I just really needed a break. Now we are in the middle of quarantine, coronavirus, and one of our local grocery stores was offering chicken breasts on sale for $1.19 a pound. Can't resist that. It's a great deal. But my freezer's already full. We got prepped. We were ready to go for this when it happened, but my freezer's full, and I've used up most of my canned chicken from last summer. It's really easy to put meat up. The main thing you need, and I know some people will water bath it, they water bath it I think for 4 hours. You really need a pressure canner. They're not super expensive. I have a Presto 23 quart. It wasn't super crazy expensive. I think it was under $100, and it does the job. I can do, I think 24 pints, and I can do 7 quarts at a time. And it's made for glass top stoves, which is what I have. So even if you have a glass top and you say, nope, sorry, I can't use a canner, you know what? That's not true anymore. They do make them that are safe. So what I did was yesterday I prepped my 20 pounds of chicken. I cut off all of the gristle, all of the fat, and I cut it into pretty large chunks. And I wish I had showed you before so you could see what the container looked like, what 20 pounds looks like. And it was about 18 pounds because we did use it for dinner last night. But that's about the size of my chunks. You don't even really have to cut the breast. You can just shove the whole thing down in the jar. But I find that when I'm using it, it shreds a little bit easier if I chunk it up. So I went ahead, and each pint has about 3 to 4 chunks in it, which is about a pound. It's about a pound of chicken. And then my quarts have about 2 pounds of chunks in it, so about double. So that's quite a bit of chicken. So if I'm going to use that, it's probably going to be for like a casserole, or if I'm making chicken tacos for the whole family. The pints that I do, the kids actually like to get them out, literally just dump the meat into a bowl, and they heat it up and eat it for lunch. My son is obsessed with this. He was so excited when I said I was making more. So what I do with this, the last time I did it, all I used was Sazon. That's it. Sazon, dumped it in the top. I did a tablespoon per jar, no liquid. It makes its own broth, so it filled about halfway up with broth. I decided this time I want a little more broth with it, especially because if I'm making soup, then I don't even really need to add anything to it. So I had some chicken stock that I had canned last summer. I actually pulled that out, and I did 2 quarts of broth in here. So I'm gonna put a half a cup per jar. So that should fill my jar almost completely up. I'm feeling like it should be pretty close to being completely full with broth then too. The broth was so savory and delicious with the Sazon last year. It's so rich, and it's almost like a concentrate. It just gets so dark and rich. So I'm feeling like if I add some chicken broth to it, it'll double that, and then I shouldn't have to add any broth when I go to make soup or whatever it is I'm making. So this is where we are right now. We're gonna go ahead and add the chicken stock to it. Before I do that, I'm gonna add my tablespoon of Sazon. I buy it in the jar. You can use packets, but this is cheaper. So if you do a tablespoon per jar, it's the same as using 1 packet per jar. And last year what I did was I put this in first and then put the chicken on top. But what I found was the bottom piece of chicken turned bright orange because it absorbed a ton of the Sazon. The rest of it went into the broth, which was fine. But this time I'm actually going to put it on top, and then I'm going to put the broth down on top of it. So hopefully it'll dissolve a little bit better, and we don't have that orange piece of chicken on the bottom of the jar. So I'm going to go ahead and prep all the jars, get them ready, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so we've got our Sazon in the jar. Now I said I used a tablespoon per jar, but that was way off. When I went to put it in, I'm like, oh, this isn't right. So I think what I did was a teaspoon per small jar. So I did about a teaspoon per small jar, and then I did a half a tablespoon in the large jar. So this is what it looks like. And then we're gonna go ahead and take our broth. Now, if you don't have one of these, invest in one. The kits that have the magnetic pull and the jar lifters, which is what that is, I have a ton of them. And it comes with one of these. I think they're like $10. Definitely do it. Invest in it, because this is going to save you so much trouble from leaking stuff everywhere. I used to do it without, and I'm not doing that anymore. All right, so it is going to take a little bit of time to absorb down in because my chicken is packed very, very tightly. So you'll see it's starting to go down. Now we could use a knife and push it down a little bit faster, but that will absorb. It'll go down in. It's just slow. All right, I'm cheating a little bit. So I'm pushing down on the sides. There it goes. All right. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now when I put my knife down in, you know, you want to run your knife down around the sides to get any air bubbles out. That's going to go the whole way down in. So I'm feeling like maybe a half cup might be a little much because it makes its own broth. So maybe instead we'll do a 1/4 cup. Do about half of that. Like I said, we're just kind of eyeballing right now. Like I know, we're leaking. I know what I had last time. You know, it made a jar of broth, so I just would like to bring that up to the top. Look, see, I made a mess anyway. This is what happens when you're working with a camera and you're trying to do this one-handed. All right, so we got the rest to go down in. So this is what it's gonna look like. It's pretty orange. I'm definitely feeling like a 1/4 cup of broth will probably do it. We may have some leakage when we go to can. I don't know, we'll have to see, but I'm thinking like, I think a 1/4 cup may do it. It might even be a little less than a 1/4 cup in these little jars. I think we can probably do a half cup in the larger quarts because I don't have them filled quite as full. So I'm feeling like that might be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish these and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to wipe the jars and then we'll process. I got my Saison into the jars. A little word to the wise, and I knew this and I don't know why I didn't put a paper towel down underneath it. When we made a mess, it stained our countertops. A little bit of vinegar will get that right up, but if I had just put a towel down underneath my jars, which I normally do, the towel would have caught it and it wouldn't have stained my counter. So it's just a little word to the wise. If you're working with Saison, it's a little, it stains pretty bad. Okay, so now we have our jars ready to go. So we're just gonna take a knife and run them down around the side of the jar. That's gonna release any air bubbles that are trapped. So it's easier to do with our wide mouth jars, but we're using regular jars too. So you'll see that also makes the juice go the whole way down to the bottom as well. Not hard to do. Definitely a step you don't want to skip because that sometimes can cause your lids to pop in the canner. You just want to release all those air bubbles. Now we probably could use a little more juice in that one, but I think I'm going to let it go. I want to see what I need to make enough juice without making a mess. And see, look, it pushes that juice the whole way down to the bottom. So we're doing 2 birds, 1 stone here. No pun intended. Okay. And you can see that it's releasing those air bubbles. You can actually see them moving. All right, so once we get this done, I'm gonna stop for now so I can show you the next step. This is just a wet paper towel. That's literally all you wanna use. You wanna wipe your rims down. You don't want any of that Saison or any of the chicken goo to be on there. That's gonna prevent your seal from sticking. So you're literally just gonna run that the whole way around. And it's easier to do with 2 hands, but you want to make sure that you get that top edge and also your side edge too. It's just, it'll keep them cleaner in the long run. So we really didn't get much off. You'll see there's a teeny bit of orange there. Wasn't a whole lot there, but better safe than sorry. Okay, so I have my lids and my rims ready to go. So we're gonna take, and we're going from cold. So none of this is hot, it's all cold. And we're gonna start our canner on cold. So you're just gonna tighten, fingertip tight. I don't go crazy. That's it. And now you are ready for the canner. So once we get our canner prepped, I'll show you what it looks like when we fill it, and then we'll go ahead and process and I'll show you the end product. So these are our pints. Oh, you just heard a seal that we processed for the 90 or the 75 minutes. I'm sorry. And this is the end result. So I did add liquid to it. I added about a 1/4 cup, not quite a half, and it did exactly what I had hoped for. It took the liquid right up to the very top. Now you will see it did siphon some. You see how my water is definitely a little on the murky side. So I will have to completely wash these jars, But personally, I feel like it's totally worth it to be able to have all of that broth. Now, when I looked in my canner book, it did say when you're cold packing not to add liquid. So I'm curious to see if I'm gonna have some that maybe don't set up, that don't seal. And if I do, you know, I'll just have to use those, which is not a problem around here, because like I said, my kiddos love this. But as you can see, it took the broth right up to the top. The chicken is completely cooked and it looks really, really awesome. And none of that orange piece of chicken at the bottom because the Saison completely dissolved. So that's kind of what I was hoping for. Totally worked. And I will let you know after these sit for a while how many seal out of the 7. So I told you I would let you know how many of them sealed, and all 7 have sealed. All are perfect, filled totally right up to the top with liquid and chicken, and they look amazing. So I did go ahead and put my quarts in, and I just wanted to show you. Basically, this is what it looks like. For that 10 minutes, you want to see steam coming out. You can kind of see it. I don't know if you can see. I don't think you can, but you can hear it. So when you put your jars in the canner, you're going to put it on high, and then you want to see it steaming or making this noise right here for 10 solid minutes before you put your pressure gauge on. And then at that point, it's going to start building up the pressure, building up steam. Then you're going to get it to the 12 pounds of pressure. For me personally, that's where I'm at. Whatever poundage you have to use for your elevation. And then we're going to process the quart jars for about 90 minutes. And then pull them off our burner, let them completely come down to temp on its own. Then we open, then we pull the jars out. Pulling them out too early is going to cause siphonage, and you don't want that. We did have a little bit of siphonage, but I think it's because we added liquid to it. So, you know, didn't follow my canning guidelines in my book, but it totally worked, and they are perfect. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments and I'll answer as best I can. And happy canning!